And welcome back into CBS Sports HQ. We are going through Pete Prisco's very first mock draft here of the off season. So we just did 1 through 10. Now taking a look at 11 through 20. We finally see Jaylen Waddle going off the board. Also, the 49ers getting a new quarterback in Trey Lance. So let's talk about it. Let's welcome back in Pete Prisco, Ryan Wilson. So let's start with the Giants at 11. Pete has them taking Alabama wide receiver Jaylen Waddle. So, Ryan, I want to toss this over to you. Devontae Smith is gone. Jamar Chase is gone. So how do you feel about this pick here?
I love this pick. This might be one of my favorite picks in Pete Prisco mock draft version 1.0. By the way, he's on 1.0. I feel like I've run 85% of a marathon, and Pete is as fresh as a daisy, and I'm limping to the finish line. So that's where we're at in the mock draft race. But this pick I actually like. I like it a lot because Daniel Jones, yes, he needs help along the offensive line, but there are very few people as explosive as Jaylen Waddle, not just coming out, but in the whole entire world. And we saw a glimpse of that at Alabama in 2020 before he got injured, and we saw a glimpse of that when he came back, sort of hobbled in that championship game, and was still outrunning people. He's a four-down player. He can return kicks. He is as fast as Henry Ruggs, maybe slightly slower, but he's a much better player in my mind than Henry Ruggs, and I think he'll have an immediate impact in New York and make life a lot easier for Daniel Jones, especially with the news that Saquon Barkley should be back at some point early in the season as well.
Yeah, I would love this pick for the Giants. I think it gives Daniel Jones a real legitimate threat outside in the passing game. I just don't think Dave Gettleman will do it. I put him there, but I don't think he'll do it. Dave Gettleman likes drafting big people. That's what he does. And I know he's gotten away from it a couple times, but his preference is to take linemen. So as much as I would like to see this pick for the Giants, because I think it would fit and help Daniel Jones, I just don't see the Giants doing it.
As we know, everybody needs to listen to GMP Prisco. This is why we have you on air and put you on social media. All right, let's go to the 49ers at 12. You have them taking North Dakota State quarterback Trey Lance. Now, I know Ryan does not necessarily disagree with this because he's had them taking the exact same pick in some of his latest mock drafts. But my question to you is, Ryan, if you had Mac Jones here, you had Trey Lance here, you're the 49ers, who are you going with?
I can see Kyle Shanahan leaning towards Trey Lance only because he's had success doing this in the past with a quarterback that probably wasn't as good as Trey Lance should be, and that's RG3 back when he was the offensive coordinator for Washington. And RG3 had a fantastic rookie season until his career was sidelined by injuries and refusing to go out of bounds and taking huge hits, which led in part to more injuries. I think Trey Lance has a chance to be good. The only issue is he has not played a lot of football. The other issue is he played at FCS North Dakota State, which is a really good program for FCS, but it's a run-heavy offense. And when you watch him play in 2019, he's not the centerpiece of that offense. It's the running game. He's a great runner, but he has a great arm, great physical tools, all the things you like to see in these young quarterbacks that are now starring in the NFL, but he just hasn't done enough of it. He hasn't played enough football to feel comfortable, even with Kyle Shanahan dialing up the plays, to come in right away. But I do feel like he could be a really special player down the road, probably as soon as 2022.
Which is why this makes sense. And, you know, unlike the Packers, who have a star MVP quarterback and had no business drafting a young prospect last year like they did, the 49ers don't. They have Jimmy Garoppolo, and they could play Jimmy Garoppolo for this year and draft Trey Lance and let him be the quarterback of the future. He fits their offense. He can move. He's athletic. You got to be able to get outside in all those boots and get outside the pocket and make throws, and I think Trey Lance can do that. So he fits better in this scheme than Mac Jones does. I'm not necessarily saying he's going to be a better quarterback right off the bat, but I think he would fit for the 49ers. And you could just play Jimmy Garoppolo this year and then get rid of him and play Trey Lance next year.
All right, agreement on that. Number 12, Trey Lance to the 49ers from both Pete and Ryan. Let's move on to the Chargers with the 13th overall pick. Pete Prisco, you have them taking Rashawn Slater. I don't think anything, or anyone, I should say, is really going to argue with this. It gives Justin Herbert some protection.
Yeah, and this kid impressed me. I was watching his tape yesterday against Chase Young last year, and he did some really good things. He held his own against Chase Young when Northwestern played Ohio State. Now, he opted out last year, so there's no tape on him from last season. But when you go back 2 years ago, athletic, tough, physical, anchors. I think he's perfect for what Justin Herbert needs. The Chargers have had line issues for years. It was a problem for Phillip Rivers. It's been a problem for Justin Herbert. They need to get better up front. This pick would make a ton of sense.
All right, Vikings 14. Pete Prisco has them taking Azeez Ojulari. Ryan, I want to know if you agree with this. In Pete's article, he says he needs to beef up a little bit. We know you know how to put weight on people from yesterday with ice cream and mac and cheese, but do you like the pick?
I do like the pick, and Azeez is listed at 240. I was talking to a scout that said he's bigger than that, and he actually, if you watch him, he plays a lot stronger than that. He's stout at the point of attack. He can set the edge regularly. He played really well against Alabama, and that's what you want to see. How do you play against the best teams? And you wear shoulder pads like this, which also apparently makes him savage. But it's crazy because he's underrated. Even though he plays for one of the best programs in the country, he gets off the edge with explosiveness. He does a lot of things really well. He's very consistent. He's not a flashy player, but I think he fits exactly what Mike Zimmer's looking for. They need help at all three levels, so it makes sense to get a defensive lineman here, whether edge rusher or interior. They also need help at safety and maybe even cornerback, but this is a great place to start. I think Ojulari, for me, feels like a 15 to 25 range guy, so this is perfect for him.
Yeah, I think this is one of the most underrated players in this entire draft. And when you pop on the tape, he really explodes into people. And I said he needs to gain weight. He doesn't need to gain that much. 15 pounds, and he's perfect for playing down end in their defense coming up the field. Remember, the Vikings went and tried to fix the defensive line by trading for Yannick Ngakoue and then ended up trading him away because it didn't work. Well, they need to get Danielle Hunter back playing healthy, and they need to get another guy opposite him, and I think Ojulari would be great in that role. You get guys back healthy, and all of a sudden that defense, which Mike Zimmer knows a thing or two about defense, will be much improved.
Let's go to the Patriots at 15. Pete Prisco has them taking Kyle Pitts here. Kyle Pitts is somebody in a lot of mock drafts who's really just kind of moving all over the place in the first round here. So Pete Prisco, why'd you pick him for the Patriots?
Because I think when you look at their quarterback position, I think they could go quarterback here, but I think they'll address it before the draft in one way or another. Maybe they'll even keep Cam Newton, and they need to get weapons for that guy, and they need to get toys, and I think Kyle Pitts would be a great toy for Josh McDaniels. Remember, back in the day, they used to have the double tight end set with Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez, and Josh McDaniels was able to do so many different things. This kid can catch the ball like a wide receiver. He can get down the field. He can create mismatches on the inside. I love his ability. I would have him higher in this draft, but position value comes into play. Again, you're always looking for the bigger guys or the pass rushers or the corners, and not necessarily a tight end, but I think this would be a great pick for the Patriots.
Yeah, I'll be sort of surprised if he's here in the middle of the first round just because of basically what Pete has said about him. He's listed as 6'6", and he's also a tight end, quote unquote, but he plays everywhere. And he reminds me of Darren Waller in terms of his playmaking ability. And we might be having a conversation in 3 or 4 years where we look back and say this was the best pass catcher in this draft class. I've had him going as high as number 5 to the Bengals, which seems crazy, but again, it's one more target for Joe Burrow. He could go somewhere like the Giants at number 11, which we just talked about all the players they need there. Evan Ingram's in the final year of his deal. He hasn't lived up to expectations, but if he's there at 15, I feel like the Patriots are running to the podium to take him because he's an immediate game changer and fills 2 needs for New England. They get him a tight end, which they haven't had since Gronk left, and gets him a wide receiver, which they have been unable to draft successfully in some time.
Yeah, Ryan, your latest mock does have him going 5th overall there to the Bengals. All right, let's move on to the Cardinals at 16. I do love how DeAndre Hopkins is on social media trying to recruit J.J. Watt. Instead, Ryan Wilson, Patrick Peterson could be on his way out as he's about to be a free agent. So Pete is going with a cornerback here in Jaycee Horn. How do you like this one?
It's a great pick. Jaycee Horn is as physical as they come, and he is not afraid of anything. His dad, Joe Horn, was a wide receiver in the league for a long time. JC's on the other side of the ball, and when you watch him play, he plays like a grown man. He opted out the last few games after the coach was fired. No one cares about that. If you want to get a glimpse of how good Jaycee Horn was in 2020, go watch him play Auburn, where he went up against Seth Williams, who is about 6'4" and a thick wide receiver. He shut him down all day long. Look, Bo Nix isn't a great quarterback. That has something to do with it, but Horn made play after play after play. This is a big need for Arizona. They need help along the edge as well, but I think if Jaycee Horn is there, and here's the Auburn game, there's a legit case that he's the 3rd best cornerback in this class. It makes a ton of sense for the Cardinals to go out and get him.
At 17, we find the Raiders, and Pete Prisco has them taking Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah out of Notre Dame. Pete, we know this kid's athletic. He can play multiple positions. So how do you see him fitting in with the Raiders?
Well, anybody they pick on defense will fit in with the Raiders. They were awful last year. They were terrible. I mean, at all levels, down guys. They have no great pass rusher. They blew a pick on Cleveland Farrell, who's just a guy. Crosby's a good effort player up front. Down guys are just okay. The linebackers were dreadful last year. And remember, they spent to fix that. They got Corey Littleton. They got a couple other guys, and it didn't work out for them. And so now I think they need to get a guy who's a real playmaker. And again, I go back to what I said before about these linebackers who can run. You have to be able to cover a lot of ground, and I think this would make a lot of sense. But they could go in any direction on defense. It should be defense, 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 and some more defense for the Raiders and that crew.
I like Owusu-Koramoah a lot. I don't know if he's going to be a linebacker, though. He might be 200 pounds, so he's going to have to gain a ton of weight to play linebacker. But you can just play one of those hybrid roles, linebacker/safety. He moved all over the place at Notre Dame. He is explosive. I watched him over the summer and liked him. Then went back and watched him again this week against Alabama. He is everywhere, and it's funny. He doesn't have it, but he plays with his hair on fire. And it reminded me a little bit of Troy Polamalu in terms of where he is on the field and how he's a sideline-to-sideline guy. And Pete's right. That's what the Raiders need. They need guys that can get after the football wherever it is on the field, because we saw a lot of slow-footed defensive football for the Raiders last year, and it cost them a lot of games. Owusu-Koramoah plays sometimes out of control, but you would rather have that than being a step or two slow to the football.
Yesterday, Ryan Wilson telling people to stop picking on kids that might be a little underweight here going into the draft. And here you are saying he might be a little skinny here, Ryan Wilson. All right, let's go to the Dolphins at 18. Pete, you have them taking Zaven Collins. And for this, you said you try to put yourself in the mindset of Brian Flores.
Yeah, and this is one of my favorite players in this entire draft. It really is. And every time, and believe it or not, I watched a lot of Tulsa games on Friday night and Thursday night and did everything. And he was everywhere. He could do so many different things. He's such an athletic kid. And when you look at the way Brian Flores wants his defenders playing, he wants them to have scheme versatility. Not unlike what happened in New England. There were a lot of guys in New England that they brought in there, and they moved them around, and they taught them a bunch of different positions, and this kid has the ability to do that. He can rush the passer. He's good in coverage. He can run to the football. He's tough enough at the point of attack. I think he'd be a perfect draft pick for the Miami Dolphins.
All right, Ryan, we had you do the same thing yesterday in your latest mock draft here, which was talking about the guys that you had going to the Dolphins, which was Penei Sewell and Rondale Moore. So grade Pete Prisco's picks for the Dolphins in this draft so far: Ja'Marr Chase and Zaven Collins.
I love Zaven Collins. He is going to be a really good player. I like that pick a lot. I love Ja'Marr Chase. He's my wide receiver one, as you mentioned, Amanda. My only issue is that 3 is pretty rich for a wide receiver in terms of taking one that high. Last year, Henry Ruggs went first overall, the first wide receiver at number 12. And then you see guys that go high, and you sort of wonder, like you look back at 2017, Corey Davis, Mike Williams, and John Ross went 5, 7, and 9. They didn't really work out. So you have to make sure you hit a home run with Ja'Marr Chase. Tua needs weapons. I get the pick there, but overall, if you're saying I got 2 first-round picks, I got Ja'Marr Chase and Zaven Collins, that feels like an A+ to me.
All right, A+ from Ryan Wilson. Let's move on to the Washington football team at 19. Of course, they need a long-term solution at quarterback. Pete Prisco has them taking Mac Jones. Ryan, I want to toss this to you because you agreed if Mac Jones and Trey Lance were there at 12 that the 49ers would probably go with Trey Lance. So how do you feel about Mac Jones to Washington?
I don't know if Mac Jones will be here should the football team want a quarterback. As you know, Amanda, I am driving the Mac Jones bandwagon. It could land successfully. It could go right off the cliff. We'll find out in a few months. But I think he has a chance to be really, really good. Is he mobile? No, he's not mobile. I joked last week I could probably beat him in the 40, but he does everything else well. He did it better than Tua did. I think he's going to have a better rookie season in the NFL than Tua did. And I think football team would love to have him here. But if you told me he went top 12, top 10, I could see it. He is that good. I know he's throwing to wide open receivers. Tua did the exact same thing. No one seemed to have an issue with it. I just think Mac Jones did it at a higher level.
Yeah, he's throwing the wide open receivers, guys who are going to be high draft picks. He's also playing behind an offensive line that will have a bunch of guys drafted relatively high. And he's got a running back who's a star player. It could go in the first round. But I like him. I'm with you. I think he's smart. I think he's accurate. I think he's tough. I think he will fit. And I think if he fell here to the Washington football team's, I didn't mean to say that, he would be one of those players that they would do cartwheels over. The one concern with Mac Jones, and it's a concern with the way the game is played now, you have to be able to get outside the pocket. Doesn't mean you have to be able to run. It means you have to be able to make plays off schedule. Aaron Rodgers has made a living doing that. He's great in the pocket, but he can get outside when he has to and make plays with his arm off schedule. Can Mac Jones do that? That's the one concern. I'm a big fan of Mac Jones. I think he's going to be a good NFL quarterback. I think this would be a great spot for him.
And I know that is Ryan Wilson's concern as well for Mac Jones. All right, let's move on to the Bears at number 20. Now, Pete Prisco, you have them taking Jalen Mayfield, right tackle out of Michigan. As we know, Ryan Wilson's had 24 mock drafts, so I was trying to go through them to see if he's had Jalen Mayfield at all in the first round. So far, I've not had it, so in a second, Ryan can correct me if I'm wrong. So, Pete, why him to the Bears?
Again, this goes back to my theory on when in doubt, get better up front. And they had all kinds of issues on their offensive line, and he's a big physical kid. And pro scouts that I've talked to told me to go back and watch him. I went back and watched him, and I like what I see from him. So I think it makes sense. Again, Bobby Massey, been a disappointment at right tackle, probably going to get let go because of contract way too prohibitive. So I think they need to get better up front. The offensive line, if you're not good up front, I don't care if it's Mitch Trubisky, Nick Foles, whoever playing quarterback, you're not going to be any good on offense. So improvement on the offensive line is the main reason why I went with him in this spot.
Amanda, version 18 of my mock draft had Jalen Mayfield going to the Bears. And Pete's right. They need help along the offensive line. And I would ask on Sunday nights when I was in Stanford, I would ask Joe Musso, our guy up there for CBS Sports HQ, who's a Bears fan, what do you want in the first round? And without fail, he would always say an offensive lineman. You get wide receiver help here. A quarterback would be nice, but there probably won't be one here. Jalen Mayfield needs to get stronger to the point of attack, or some of the things you see when you watch him on tape. But he has all the physical tools. He's going to get better. These guys are young, and sometimes you forget about that when you're watching them play against other college kids. He'll get stronger. He'll get better. Right now, he has some work to do, but he is a first-round talent. If you talk to teams around the league, they certainly would agree with that. All
right, Ryan and Pete, hang on a second, because something miraculous is about to come up on the other side of this break. Could it be Pete Prisco taking a running back in the first round? And not only that, somebody whose name is not Najee Harris. Stay tuned.
And you know, it's officially the off season when Pete Prisco starts doing mock drafts. We've already covered off his first 20 picks, so here's a sneak peek at 21 through 26. Now that would be the Colts, Titans, Jets, Steelers, Jaguars, and the Browns. And for more, of course, let's bring in Pete Prisco and Ryan Wilson. Pete's first full mock up for your viewing and analytical pleasure over on CBSSports.com. Some of the write-ups are short, some of them are sweet, some of them not so much. But we're having Pete break things down here alongside a guy who's already done 11 billion mocks, and that's our Ryan Wilson, 24 so far. Okay, so now, Pete, we're at Indianapolis. It is Alijah Vera-Tucker time, USC, the Colts bolstering their offensive line. What's the thinking with this pick here?
Well, Anthony Costanzo has retired, and they got a big hole at left tackle. We saw that when he was injured this year, and they really struggled at that spot. They need to get better over there. Vera-Tucker is an interesting player because he's played guard some at USC, moved to left tackle last year, really did a nice job. So I think it fills a need, and he's also a really good player. And if for some reason he didn't work out at tackle, I think he could slide inside and play guard.
Yeah, Pete, you're right. And the funny thing is, they kicked him out to tackle because they had a need there, and he just dominated. And to the point where I've talked to teams that like him better as a left tackle and like him as the number 2 left tackle in this class. And I was shocked. I said, so wait, you like him as a guard? No, we like him as a tackle. So that versatility, it will be incredibly important, not only in Indianapolis, but should he go higher. What else could the Colts do? Obviously, they have a quarterback situation looming. Maybe Carson Wentz is in the plans there. They could get a cornerback if they wanted to. Xavier Rhodes is going to be a free agent soon. But if they go with Alijah Vera-Tucker, they're basically getting 2 for 1. A guy can come in day one and start at either left tackle or pick him inside, let him play guard.
And interesting here, Ryan, too, in your latest mock draft, you don't think he's around at this point of the draft. You think he's probably gone. around the 14th pick. Okay, let's go to the Tennessee Titans, who need some help on the defensive side of the ball. Jaelan Phillips is the pick here from the University of Miami. Pete, 45 tackles, 21 solo. This is a guy who can get it done. He got 8 sacks, so he can get to the quarterback as well.
Yeah, and you look at the Titans, 19 sacks last year. 19. It was one of the lowest numbers for a playoff team in history. That's terrible. They have to get better rushing the passer. Jadeveon Clowney didn't work out for them. They still need to find guys who can get after the quarterback. And Phillips did some really good things for Miami. Now, there are some concerns. Remember, he quit the game of football at UCLA. For a while, there's some concern with that, and then ended up in Miami. But I think he's one of those guys that's getting better and better the more he plays, and I think he just fills a major need for the Titans, who have to address the pass rush in a big way in this draft and in free agency.
Yeah, and both of you guys going with edge help here for the Titans with this pick. Ryan, you had Russo as your guy coming off the edge here. Okay, this is a point of the draft where I had to read this twice just to make sure that this was right. But Pete, the New York Jets, this pick here, Travis Etienne, the running back from Clemson, Ryan, is who he's going with. I mean, first time for everything. Pete Prisco taking a running back in the first round of his mock draft. What do you think of this pick?
I mean, it makes sense. It just doesn't make sense coming out of Pete's mouth. So that's why I wanted to talk about it. But Travis Etienne, and Pete will tell you, is a really good player out of Clemson. I actually like Najee Harris a little better in terms of being more consistent. He's not as fast as Etienne, but he can catch the ball coming out of the backfield, and he can clearly run over people. We saw that throughout the season in 2020, and he's surprisingly athletic for his size as well. But Etienne gives Zach Wilson, who Pete had going with the number 2 overall pick, a reliable back in the backfield. They need help there. I do wonder, and I'll ask you, Pete, did you think about a wide receiver? Because someone like Rondale Moore here feels like a really good fit for Zach Wilson, looking for a security blanket too.
Yeah, they could go wide receiver here. And by the way, these are mock drafts where you try and project what the team is going to do. I'm not saying I would do that. And I do have a mock draft the week of the draft where I do one every year where it's what I would do if I was the general manager of all 32 teams. Would I take Etienne here? I'd consider it. I really would. As surprising as that is, coming from a guy who just downgrades backs all the time. But you know my philosophy. Draft them, run them into the ground, and draft another one. This is late enough in the first round where it's not a marquee pick, and he's an airback. That's what this league is built on. Think of Alvin Kamara. Think of Christian McCaffrey. Airbacks. They get out in space. They create problems. They're great in the passing game, and he's got that home run ability. That's why I picked him over Najee Harris, who I think is a really good back, but this kid has special speed and special home run ability, so that's why I put him here.
Yeah, and as you said, you wouldn't necessarily take the back here, but he's a home run threat, and that's exactly what the Jets need at this point, and a good pairing with Zach Wilson as well. All right, let's talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers next with their pick. We are at number 24. Tevin Jenkins on the offensive line. I mean, this is a sensible pick here, Pete, when you look at the situation with Pittsburgh.
Yeah, the offensive line was the major problem for the Steelers last year. Yeah, everybody early on said, oh, Ben Roethlisberger's not the same. James Conner couldn't run the ball. I mean, when you look at them, they have to be able to be improved up front. It's been their calling card for years. The Steelers' offensive line has been a team strength for a long, long time. It wasn't last year. Villanueva, the left tackle, really struggled. He's a free agent. Pouncey's going to retire. Matt Filer's a free agent. Zach Banner's coming off an injury. They have all kinds of, and he's a free agent. They have all kinds of injuries on that and issues on that offensive line. So they have to get better. This would make sense. Jenkins is a guy who would fit with what they do. They have to improve that front in front of Ben Roethlisberger for at least one more year. Ben will be back. You got to go make a run at it. You got to get better up front.
Yeah, Tevin Jenkins plays with an edge, and if you want to get a glimpse of that, go watch Oklahoma State, Texas, where he spends part of the afternoon manhandling Joseph Ossai, who is a really, really good player for Texas. That's what you need in Pittsburgh. Pete talked about all the issues along the offensive line, the free agents and the guys that aren't going to come back. If Roethlisberger is going to return as a 30-year-old who's afraid to stand back there more in the second and a half, you have to protect him. And Tevin Jenkins, I mean, it makes too much sense not to happen. You might be able to talk me to Najee Harris here. I had him going in my latest mock draft to Pittsburgh, but he can't block and run the ball at the same time. So you got to start somewhere, and the offensive line is as good a place as any.
All right, let's go to Jacksonville, number 25. A wide receiver here is Kadarius Toney is what Pete's looking at. So what do you think of this one, Ryan?
I like it. I mean, Kadarius Toney, when he has the ball in his hand, he's a running back. Sometimes you watch wide receivers play, and their yard after the catch game is basically zero. They catch it and they go down. Kadarius Toney is the exact opposite. He excels at yards after the catch. And again, in an offense like Jacksonville, where you're getting the ball out from Trevor Lawrence to your playmakers as quickly as possible, this is best case scenario. Trevor Lawrence has a ton of experience in terms of the quick passing game. He did it for 3 years at Clemson, did it at a high level. Kadarius Toney came into the season probably as a third-round pick and played out of his mind and worked his way into the first round. This is a great pick for an Urban Meyer offense that's going to try to hit the ground running. And, you know, Pete has his fingers crossed. This team's going to win more games than they lose in 2021.
And as Pete says in his write-up, this is an Urban Meyer-style player, although the Jaguars could also grab a wide receiver in free agency. Okay, let's go to Cleveland and pick 26 here. And going defensive line here, Pete, Christian Barmore is who you have selected.
Yeah, and you look at their defensive line, it was an issue at times last year in the interior. And you know, Larry Ogunjobi is an unrestricted free agent, probably going to leave. They need to get better on the interior. Barmore, the one thing Barmore did was he showed up in the big games. There's a concern about that, but there's also something positive about that. What happened in the other games? Because he didn't always play with the same motor. And did he take games off when they weren't as important? That's a question that needs to be asked, because that happened in games. He was dominant in the big games, and that's always a good sign. So he would make a lot of sense for the Browns on the interior.
And you guys both going with defensive players for this one. All right, that does it for picks 21 through 26. One more round of picks left as we finish off Pete Prisco's first mock draft of the offseason. Up next, maybe this is the year the Packers finally give Aaron Rodgers some new targets. It's not like he needs them, as he's proven. Could Rondale Moore be one of those guys? We'll talk about that next. Pete Prisco's first mock draft of the offseason is up and available for your reading pleasure over on CBSSports.com. We made our way through 26 picks. Time to finish this bad boy off. Picks 27 through 32 up for discussion now. And we bring in Pete Prisco and Ryan Wilson. Football Happy Hour continues. Okay, Pete. We're on to the 11-5 Baltimore Ravens, second in the AFC North last season, and you have them addressing defense with the Texas linebacker Joseph Ossai.
Yeah, edge. They need to get better on the edge. And Yannick Ngakoue is an unrestricted free agent. Matt Judon is an unrestricted free agent. And Pernell McVie is also an unrestricted free agent. So they have to get better on the edge. And I think he would be one of those guys that could step in and play standing up in their defense and be a big part of improving a pass rush. Remember, they went out and traded to get Ngakoue during the season with the idea that they would need that pass rush to make a Super Bowl run. He did okay. He was a little bit of a disappointment for him, so they got to improve that area. So he would be a perfect pick for them to try and upgrade a pass rush that needs it.
And as we go to pick 28, I mean, this pick makes complete sense when you look at it for the New Orleans Saints, going after Kwity Paye here, Ryan, especially with the Trey Hendrickson situation. We're not really too sure. It doesn't look like he's going to be back. But when you look at it, I mean, you have him going a lot higher in this draft. But if he's still available, I mean, this seems like a pretty good value pick at this point.
Yeah, and Pete makes a good point. You pair him opposite Cam Jordan, and that makes life a lot easier for Kwity Paye, because coming into the summer, Kwity Paye looked like a day 3 guy based on the way he was playing. The athleticism is there, the power, the strength is all there. He just hadn't put it all together. He did that in a shortened season to the point where scouts and NFL teams like him as a first-round pick, and I think he has a chance to be better in year 2, year 3 as an NFL player than year 1. What better way to get better than playing opposite someone like Cam Jordan, who will get a lot of the attention, allowing you to grow into that role.
Okay, so Kwity Paye to the Saints at number 28. Number 29, there's some agreement here, just not on the particular player that they're going to take. I mean, last year we thought the Green Bay Packers were going to take a wide receiver. This year, you guys have them taking a wide receiver. Pete Prisco has them going with Rondale Moore here with this pick. Ryan, your thoughts on this choice?
I love Rondale Moore. He only played 7 games the last 2 years. That's a concern. He's undersized, but a lot like Kadarius Toney, he is a bulldog with the ball in his hands. He will run people over. He's impossible to cover in open space, and he is more explosive than Toney for me. I think you pair him with Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers, and that's lights out for the rest of that division, and they're right back in the Super Bowl mix.
All right, let's go to the Buffalo Bills next with their choice. Levi Onwuzurike. Of course, this is a team that had problems with the run last year, Pete, in terms of stopping it. You look at, that they were that close. This is a situation where they can address a need here, isn't it?
Yeah, no doubt. Ed Oliver's a good player. He's just not very big. They get pushed around at the point of attack. And this guy's not an enormous player. And remember, he opted out last year, did some good things at the Senior Bowl when he did play this season. But he's a guy that can get up the field. He can play solid against the run and give them some push in the middle. If you're going to beat the Chiefs, and get to the Super Bowl, you better get pressure on the interior, and we saw that in the championship game. They couldn't get much on Patrick Mahomes. This is the kind of guy that can help both in the run game and pressure in the quarterback.
And he's certainly going to have a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, too. He opted out of 2020, 95 tackles in his previous 3 seasons, though, so this is a guy who can certainly get the job done with the Bills. All right, let's go over to the Kansas City Chiefs. Gregory Rousseau is the pick here for the edge rusher is what we're looking at. 6'7", 265 pounds here. Ryan, another guy who opted out of 2020, but in 2019 he did very well. What do you make of the pick?
I think Pete is actually onto something by having him this low. If you went back into September and looked at mock drafts, he's like a top 5 guy because we had no idea about the rest of the edge class. And you go back and watch Greg Rousseau play, and a lot of his sacks, even though he played on the edge, came from the inside. That won't happen in the NFL. He's also a converted wide receiver who's learning the position, so you understand that there's going to be room to grow into this role. And the funny thing is, he was number 15 in 2019, and he got 15.5 sacks. 15 this year, Jaelan Phillips is actually going higher in Pete's mock draft, and I think Pete is actually right in terms of where they end up going once the eventual draft rolls around.
Yeah, I talked to a GM the other day. He said he might be the most overrated guy in this entire draft. I still think he fits a need for the Chiefs. They have all kinds of problems getting after the quarterback off the edge. Frank Clark, a major disappointment this season. Remember, they paid big money for him, and he flopped a little bit this year. They have to improve their ability to knock down the quarterback. Tom Brady, you can still see him standing there. No pressure. Nobody near him. That's what they have to address, and I think he would make some sense. But again, a little bit of a disappointment in terms of where he's going to go. Remember, there were people who had him in the top 5 last year. Top 5. That's not going to happen.
All right, and the final pick of the first round of Pete Prisco's first mock draft of 2021 is, of course, for the Super Bowl champions, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Pete, you say this in your write-up that if we learned anything about Tampa Bay this year, it's the importance of the offensive line, and the pick of Samuel Cosmi is something here that they will certainly help to address what little issues there are.
Yeah, and Donovan Smith is getting up in the years, and he's not a great player. He had a good playoff run. Got to give him credit for that. He was pretty good in the Super Bowl, but they could get out from underneath his contract easily. I think he'll play for another year, but you draft his replacement. You have a guy in Wirfs who's going to be a star, whether you play him at right tackle or left tackle. You get another young guy there. This is a team that doesn't have a lot of great needs, and so why not continue to fortify an offensive line? That was a big reason why they were able to win the Super Bowl.
All right, well, that'll do it for Pete Prisco's first offseason mock draft. Pete, you're at 1. Ryan, you're at 24. So, Pete, a little catching up to do, but, of course, lots of great mock drafts coming up.
Won't catch him. Will not catch him.
Thanks to both of you for taking the time to break down the picks. Both men have mocks over up on CBSSports.com. And for more on the mocks and what the NFL offseason has in store, be sure to check out the Pick 6 podcast. Ryan Wilson, Will Brinson, John Breach, having fun and calling it work. The latest episode looking at the offseason priorities in the AFC East. Download and subscribe wherever you get your preferred audio.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.